The story you're about to hear is another original from me. It was already mid-morning with his favorite song playing in the background as he swept the dirt into the dustpan. Asata emptied the dirt into the dustbin, then snatched a duster from the table and began to clean up the drawer beside his bed for the fourth time. He lifted some magazines lying on top of it to wipe the spot clean, then caught sight of some pictures beneath them. He dropped the duster, picked up the pictures, and began looking at them one after another. After the fifth picture, his mind wandered as he began to daydream. Sanitation Saturday, when the neighbors cleaned up the neighborhood for the month, crossed his mind. It was just 3 days earlier. They had worked hard all morning, only for him to find a corner of the street that he dedicated his time to cleaning all by himself, littered with paper and nylon. He could feel the frustration all over again as though it just happened. Another time, when he strolled along hand in hand with his girlfriend, he stopped to help a young girl pick up the mangoes she was hawking that had fallen and scattered all over the ground. While he helped her gather the mangoes into her tray, his girlfriend, Tolani, wore a frown with her arms folded. She refused to hold his hand when he returned to her. Another time, while he swept the pavement right in front of his house, a boy walking along with his girlfriend took a posture to aim at a trash can with a wrinkled paper in his hand. He threw the paper and it hit the edge of the can and bounced off to litter the ground. He called out to the boy as he walked on with his girlfriend to return and pick up the trash. But the boy looked at him scornfully, rolled his eyes and walked on. Asata sighed and grumbled as he picked up the trash and threw it away. On a couple of other occasions, as he strolled the street with Tolani, he helped two girls clean up drinks they had accidentally spilled on the ground. Tolani got upset with him and could no longer hide her frustration. She began pointing and speaking angrily to him. He was confused and could not get an explanation from her for her anger. She shoved him and walked away, ignoring him as he called out to her. He slowly sat on a chair that was beside the drawer, then, as though he was unaware, saw the pictures in his hand, then snapped out of it following the abrupt entrance of his friend, Emeka, into the room, saying, "I knew that you would be busy cleaning something. You never..." He suddenly stopped talking as he saw Asata's long face. "What is the problem?" he asked. Asata turned his head towards him but didn't look at him. Emeka caught sight of the pictures on the ground, which had dropped from Asata's hand when Emeka entered, startling him. Emeka squinted and leaned over to pick them up. "Look, you left trash on the ground. You look upset. What's on your mind?" He looked at the pictures and tried to place them together. It was pictures of a very tidy street, a few clean corners, and beautiful landscapes. His brows rose as he switched glances between the pictures and Asata, then scoffed. "You've given up on your utopian dream for this town, have you?" "I've just realized I've been wasting my time," Asata replied almost incoherently. "Alas, you've come to your senses," Emeka replied as he walked to the trash bin to throw the torn pictures in. His eyes squinted as he saw another torn-up set of pictures in the bin. He looked in surprise at Asata again, then leaned in to take the pictures in the bin. He placed them together. It was a couple of pictures of Asata and Tolani, torn apart in the middle, Tolani in one half and Asata in the other. "Finally put asunder, eh?" Emeka smirked and tossed the pictures back into the trash. "You must be delighted," Asata replied. "You never liked each other anyway. I wonder why you decided to stay so long with a superficial, self-centered Ogbome like her," Emeka replied. "What broke the camel's back?" "She thought I was interested in all the girls," Asata answered, "simply because I helped different girls on different occasions to clean up their broken bottles and their drinks that spilt. If you weren't self-absorbed, she would have known who you were by now," Emeka replied. "A fastidious fellow who is moved to clean up the environment by default." Asata held a glare at him. Emeka shrugged. "Hey, she pisses me off, but I can't blame her though. You have unrealistic ideas. It's impossible to expect people to clean up after themselves. People are naturally dirty in this town." "Including you?" Asata asked with a little frustration. Emeka shrugged and sighed but said nothing in reply. 2 days later, Asata had his backpack on and headed to the door with a travel bag. His mother rushed in front of him, begging him to stay. She scolded him, saying his dad would be disappointed if he were still alive to see that his son gave up so easily on a goal. Asata told her that his friend Emeka had visited a couple of days back and helped him realize that no one in the town shared his ideals and he was only punishing himself unnecessarily. He was hoping to move to a different location where people might at least care more about their environment than the people in his town. His mom told him in response that if he forgot anything she had raised him with, he should never forget that he would not go very far in life if he continued to give up on himself and on people. He glared at his mom with a tinge of frustration all over his face. She stepped aside and allowed him to walk out of the door. Asata walked along on the road. He plugged his nose on occasion with his thumb and index finger so he wouldn't inhale the stench that assaulted his nostrils on occasion. He flagged down a bike man who stopped beside him. He got on the bike and told him to take him to Novak Street. The bike zoomed off. Asata glared at the environment as the bike zoomed on. He frowned and grew more frustrated. The streets were clean last weekend, but it wasn't a week yet and everywhere was dirty again. 30 minutes later, the bike stopped at Novak Street. Asata hopped off the bike, paid the man, and walked into the new flat. Novak Street was a lot cleaner than his former neighborhood, but it was not clean enough for Asata. He believed that his new neighbors could do better. Within a couple of weeks, he was settled in. One early morning, as he lay in bed, the sound of someone sweeping woke him up. It came from outside. It was very close to his door. He pushed himself out of bed and walked to the door to open it. He beheld a young girl about his age sweeping the front of his house and singing a tune. Half of her face was covered with a face mask. She turned around to face Asata, following the sound of the door opening. She said to him, "Good morning. I hope I didn't disturb your sleep." "Good morning," Asata responded almost faintly as he wiped his eyes to see a little more clearly. He realized that his front yard was tidy and cleaned up. He got a bit worried and began to gesture towards the girl. No. I didn't ask for this," he began. "I don't have any money to pay you." She pulled the face mask down to her chin to reveal her broad smile. She took off one of the gloves on her hands and extended her hand towards him for a handshake. "It's no problem. My name is Alice, by the way." He stared at her hand, then at her face. "Well, Alice, I think you have the wrong house. I didn't..." "This is voluntary," she interrupted, her hand still outstretched, waiting for a handshake. "I'm not expecting you to pay me." Asata stared at her hand again, suspiciously, then back at her and began to shake his head vigorously. "You shouldn't waste your time on this. It will get messed up in a few." She lowered her hand with a confused look as Asata withdrew back into his flat and closed the door. Later on that day, Asata leaned on the window pane, staring outside of his flat. His face was drained and his eyes felt lazy. His breathing was audible as though he was struggling to breathe. He moved away from the window, rubbing his face vigorously as he walked out the door. No sooner did he step outside than he heard the sound of urine hitting the ground. He rushed at the guy who hurried off, zipping his trousers. Asata placed his palm over his nose to avoid inhaling the smell. He just wanted to have some air, taking a stroll to familiarize himself with his new environment. He saw that a few corners were littered, but it was not as terrible as his former neighborhood. He had walked for about 30 minutes when the sound of a can being kicked down the road began to give him a headache. He stopped, held his head and began to rub his forehead. He got dizzier, his eyes heavier, as he staggered and eventually collapsed, crashing to the ground. He went blank. About an hour later, he opened his eyes. He was lying belly up, his vision to the ceiling that he could not recognize. He looked to the side. He was in a room that wasn't his. He placed his hand on his forehead and there was a folded cloth on it. He removed it and struggled to sit up. "Ah, you are awake," Alice's voice startled him. He turned around and beheld Alice walking into the room with a bowl of assorted fruits. He felt drained, but he was not as drowsy as he was previously. "Where am I?" he asked. "You're at my house," she replied. "I was across the road with my brothers when I saw you fall helplessly to the ground about an hour ago. I asked them to help me bring you home." She handed him the bowl of fruits and asked, "Are you ill?"
"Thank you."
"I'm okay, I just felt very tired," he replied. "But what do you want from me helping me? First the sweeping, now this." She heaved a sigh and replied, "You should rest. I think the smell and untidiness of the environment made you sick, but don't worry, we've taken care of that." Asata kept staring at her keenly. "You didn't answer my question." She answered, "A couple of friends who go to Canal Street to play football observed a man who used to clean up the sidewalk near the field where they played. He inspired them so much that they decided to start cleaning up their environment. I greeted them for their work well done and admired how nice their side of the neighborhood was beginning to look, which inspired me to start cleaning up too. We began to realize how having a cleaner neighborhood positively affected our mood and made us feel healthier. In a short time, a few more across the street began cleaning up as well. So one day, they returned from their game and said they no longer saw the man cleaning the streets until they saw that you had moved to our side of town. Asata turned his gaze at her in surprise, realizing that he was the one she was talking about. Alice kept talking. We realized that your house wasn't cleaned up, so we volunteered to start taking turns to help clean up your environment. No one came after me after you told me you didn't want the help. Well, that's good of you all, Asata replied, but it's of no use. There are still people here who bring your efforts to naught. I saw a guy peeing close to my house and another kicking an empty can before I passed out. He raised his gaze towards her and continued, I'm sorry for how I spoke to you, but what difference can a few of us make if many others are nonchalant? It only takes a person to inspire others, she replied, just like you inspired the friends who inspired us. I'm surprised you gave up so soon. Asata turned his gaze away from her and looked down as he set the bowl of fruits on a stool beside the bed. Yeah, my mom was disappointed too. Alice stared at him briefly with a little smile, then said to him, Get up, come with me. You need some fresh air. Moments later, Asata was walking along the streets with Alice. He could see that parts of the streets were littered. I told you there was no point. See, the streets are still littered, even though you cleaned them earlier. He said, I had pictures with which I envisioned a day when my town would be as clean as the images in them. And I know that that day will never come. Alice responded reassuringly, Don't be pessimistic. If you observe closely and stop dwelling on the negative, you will notice that your little actions have already caught on. Observe closely. Asata suddenly spotted a little girl who walked towards a trash bin and tossed her waist into it. He looked to another corner and spotted a young man walking up to pick up a piece of paper that he had thrown towards the dustbin, but missed. He threw it in the bin. Asata sighed. Change is gradual. We just have to be patient, Alice said. We learn from this story that persistence and consistency can inspire lasting improvement. Sometimes, when we think our efforts were wasted, they can come full circle in different ways, reassuring us that our past efforts were never in vain. True community improvement starts with personal responsibility and voluntary service. You cannot always force instant change, but you can inspire it gradually. Cleanliness is next to godliness. What morals could you extract from the story? Share it with me in the comment section. When we return, we shall look at the quiz and the theological lessons we can learn from the story. Quiz question 1. What was the main reason Asata decided to move to Novak Street? A. He wanted a bigger house closer to his girlfriend Tolani. B. He felt frustrated and believed that no one in his original town shared his passion for cleanliness. C. His mother asked him to leave home. D. He got a new job on Novak Street. If you chose option B, you are correct. Quiz question 2. Who inspired Alice and her friends to start cleaning up their environments voluntarily? A. Asata's mother through her wise advice. B. Emeka, who encouraged community service. C. Asata himself through his earlier cleaning actions that others observed and followed. D. The local government that organized the sanitation campaign. If you chose C, you are correct. Quiz question 3. What did Alice help Asata realize when he felt discouraged about the littered streets? A. People are naturally dirty and will never change, so it's better to move. B. Change is gradual and small consistent actions by a few people can inspire others over time. C. He should focus only on cleaning inside his own house and ignore the streets. D. He should confront and argue with every person who litters. If you chose option B, you are correct. Exploring the archetypal nature of each character, Asata, the idealistic Greenie, represents devout Catholic Christians who try to restore order and beauty but get burned out by apparent failure or the terrible habits of parishioners in the church. Alice The Dorcas of Acts 9 type woman represents the young youth leaders who do corporal works of mercy without seeking reward, who do works of charity such as caring for the sick, visiting prisoners, and restoring the weary, and who also start small apostolates that grow and expand. Emeke, the cynical friend, represents lukewarm Catholics with a weak faith, conformists who are more worried about thinking that they are imposing their faith on unbelievers rather than joyfully sharing the faith with them to bring them closer to God. Tolani, the self-centered girlfriend, represents partners or spouses who are liabilities to the Christian faith walk. Rather than help their spouse grow in holiness, they drag them away from it and from God. They cause their partner's walk with God to suffer. These are the types of women that Christian men should flee from. Asata's mother, the voice of reason, represents intercessors in the Christian community who try to intervene in the lives of those whose faith is waning, not forcefully, but in an effort to help them not lose it. She also represents a mentor or a spiritual director who calls one back to one's vocation when tempted to quit. We can draw Catholic insights from this story. Asata's passion mirrors the Catholic teaching in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 378, that humans are called to till and keep the earth with care and respect, a teaching rooted in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. Environmental neglect reflects a deeper spiritual disorder, while caring for the environment is an act of love for God and neighbor. Asata, through his earlier actions, unknowingly evangelized others, showing that faithful persistence in good works inspires conversion and communal renewal, much like the saints. A waning faith can cause us to bear bad fruits, but when the faith is restored, we can bear fruits of 1,000-fold. Alice and the group, cleaning voluntarily, embody Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Asata's near despair and move represent temptation to abandon one's mission. Alice's encouragement and the visible small changes point to Christian hope. God works through the faithful remnant's actions, and we must not grow weary in doing good works. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. And let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Do you have any other stories I can tell to draw out theological lessons? Share it with us in the comment section.
The seeker of truth.